Long before the city of Gridanian came to exist in the forest of the Black Shroud, the subterranean civilization of Gelmorran made the area its home. Forced underground by the hostile elementals of the forest, the Eorzean of Gelmorran toiled for centuries in order to expand their underground home, burrowing between natural caves and shoring up passages with walls of stone. One part of the network of caves became the subterranean crypt known as Tam-Tara Deepcroft. The crypt had been used for generations as the final resting place for the remains of rulers and nobles from Gelmorran and Gridanian, including the Gelmorran king, Galvanth the Dominator. This practice had continued even into recent times, but strange occurrences began raising concerns about the crypt. Reports of shadowy figures skulking about the Deepcroft had reached the ears of Gridanian's forces. Originally, the sightings were few in number, but over time they were becoming more and more frequent. Based off of various eyewitness accounts, it was suspected that the ones responsible for these sightings was a cult known as the Lambs of Dalamud. The Lambs of Dalamud was a doomsday cult that had appeared when Dalamud, the smaller of the two moons orbiting the planet, began showing signs of its descent. The cultists believed that the scent of fresh blood would attract Dalamud, bringing it down to purify the land. Followers of the cult would often seek out adventurers, claiming that they were seeking assistance in saving their kidnapped family members, only to lead the adventurers to their doom. After the calamity where Dalamud broke apart and Bahamut emerged, the cult's purpose changed to avenging Dalamud by seeking vengeance against those who fought to prevent the advent of the falling moon. In many cases, they would summon Void Scent and other dark entities to assist with their revenge. Concerned with the presence of the cult, Lord Lewin of the God's Quiver in Gridanian contacted the Adventurers Guild. He requested that adventurers be sent to Tam-Tara Deepcroft in order to drive the cultists out of the crypt. Normally, the God's Quiver forces would have been dispatched to handle the situation, but the calamity had decimated their ranks, and the few who remained were occupied by the threat of hostile exile beastmen. Ever since an exile attack on the Central Shroud's guardian tree was thwarted, the beastmen had been searching constantly for a chance to attack, spreading the forces of Gridanian thin. Mother Mion of the Carline Canopy was eventually able to enlist the help of an adventurer who stopped a pirate threat in western Eorzean. After being briefed on the situation by Lewin, the adventurer made preparations, recruited allies, and departed for the Deepcroft. Upon arriving at the crypt's entrance, the adventurer found two other groups of adventurers nearby. The first group consisted of Isildur and Aliyan, who had just narrowly escaped disaster in the Deepcroft. The two credited their survival to a piece of fruit they had found and warned others to look before they leap, as forgetting this rule almost led to their own demise. The other group was a trio of Eminafa, Kikina, and Dolores Bear. They had just arrived at the crypt in order to conquer the threat lurking inside, but were being delayed by Eminafa's hesitancy about mausoleums. After speaking with a guard near the entrance, the group of adventurers began their descent into the crypt. Within the center chamber of the crypt, a large purple orb of energy was suspended in air, and many cultists, beasts, and void-sent demons could be seen roaming about. The adventurers pushed forward, purging the crypt of the threat, until they came across a cultist orb that had been set on top of an altar. Many of these cultist orbs were scattered throughout the crypt and seemed to be supplying energy to the larger purple orb. After defeating the cultist priests and demons defending the altar, the adventurers disabled the cultist orb and moved to disable the remaining three. The adventurers eventually disabled the second orb and made their way to the platform where the last of the orbs were being guarded by a cultist known as Octavel the Unforgiving. The cultists had erected a dark barrier that barred the path, preventing anyone from reaching Octavel or the orbs. After searching deeper into the crypt, the adventurers were able to obtain a cultist rosary that could be used to dispel the barrier. With the barrier gone, Octavel and his demons were slain and the final two cultist orbs were disabled. With energy no longer being supplied to it, the large purple orb of energy descended to the center platform. Upon reaching the ground, the orb exploded, revealing the corrupted body of the Gelmorran king, Galvanth the Dominator. The orb of energy was a cocoon that the cultists had used to warp the king's body into a vessel that could host a void-sent mind flayer. The adventurers charged at the mind flayer, but were hindered by imps that would appear to protect Galvanth. Many beasts and skeletons would also appear to assault the adventurers during the fight. After fending off the hordes of beasts, demons, and undead, the adventurers were finally able to slay the mind flayer, who burst into a cloud of purple mist. With their mission complete, the adventurers left the crypt and returned to Gridania to report their success. Upon speaking to Mother Mion about the events in the Deepcroft, she passed on a bit of thanks from Beau Lord Lewin and spoke about how she was impressed with the adventurers' success. Even with Mion's joy at seeing the adventurers return and level of experience, she reminded the adventurer that death is still a common occurrence among the Adventurers Guild. With the sheer number of requests the guild would receive, it became difficult to find enough capable hands to handle them all. This would eventually lead to inexperienced adventurers taking on requests that they were nowhere near ready for. Mion brought the adventurers' attention to a group who had entered the Deepcroft earlier, but had met with a cruel fate. It was a group the adventurer had seen before, but their leader had been slain during their expedition into the crypt. The tragedy had torn the group apart, leaving one girl alone, holding the severed head of their leader. With that somber example before them, Mion mentioned how grateful she was for adventurers with experience, as sights such as this had become far too common in the Adventurers Guild.